Good evening. Welcome to this candidate forum. Thank you all for joining us. The League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley is co-hosts for this candidate forum along with the Clayton Library Foundation.
And that's me, representing, should be live, the Clayton Community Library Foundation. We've had a lot of candidates forums, and I could be wrong, and often am, but I think this is the first time that we have had one live on Zoom, and it will be recorded where you can watch it later from the city's website. So since I've gotten pretty good at thinking up things for other people to do, I have a few thank yous to make. Thanks to the candidates for wanting to be public servants. Thanks to all of you who showed up and gave up time you could have been doing something else, and all of you who are watching on Zoom, or if you are watching this recorded later, because it's your time. And thank you for exercising your right to vote and your responsibility to be an informed voter. So I also want to thank the city staff members who have worked to make this event possible. I want to make a special thank you to Vice Mayor Kim Trupiano, who was assigned, the city council assigns a member to the executive board of the Library Foundation. So she has been the person who has been very helpful, especially in getting all this techie stuff arranged between the league and the city staff. So that's a special thank you. And so I think with that having been said, I will turn this over to Paul.
Thank you, Diana. So the purpose of this forum is to present you the candidates who are running for the City of Clayton City Council. These are at-large seats, so not by district, as we've seen in some other towns. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any candidates or political parties. The League is here as part of its key mission to educate and inform voters in a space free from bias. Additionally, I do not live in this district, and therefore I will not be voting in this contest. The City of Clayton is recording the entire forum. It will be posted to the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley YouTube page, as well as on Contra Costa Television, CCTV, and I was told it will be posted on the City Council's page in the agendas. So it should probably be there as early as tomorrow. So prior to the start of this forum, I asked the candidates to draw numbers to determine the opening order of speaking, and to make it easy for myself, I placed them in that order. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's see. And closing statements will be in the reverse order. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question, and we have 2 volunteer timers who are sitting right in the front, Juliana and Melanie. And they will raise a yellow 15-second warning card, as shown there. And a red card will be raised when it's time to really quickly wrap up. I try not to cut you off, but I hope that, once you see the red board coming up, that you quickly finish up your thought. Personal comments about opposing candidates are not permitted. Any statements you make about opposing candidates must be verifiable in the public record, vote, public statement, contributors, contributions, etc. Each candidate will be given the opportunity for 2 1-minute rebuttals during the program. Candidates must limit their rebuttal statements to correcting any mis- or disinformation from a prior speaker. And I will have the discretion to limit the rebuttal time if this is not being followed. A few reminders to our audience. If you have questions for any of our candidates, please write it on the 3x5 cards that were handed out. And you can hand it to one of our volunteers who are already busy sorting some of the questions. And the third one, Sean will also be collecting cards. Questions are screened to avoid duplicates and to conserve time, because we only have an hour, and we're 4 candidates trying to get through as many questions as possible, maybe kind of a challenge. So it may not be exactly the question that you wrote down, but we will try to synthesize it as best as possible. And all questions will be asked of each of the candidates. So if you have questions directed to a particular candidate, we will likely either not ask that question, or we will rephrase it in a way that it can be asked of all the candidates. Since the forum is recorded, we will ask you to please silence your phones. Out of respect for the hard work that went into providing this forum and to make sure that there's no improper use of the forum's contest, we do ask you not to film or record tonight's program. We also ask you that you refrain from cheers or applause for a statement in order to preserve the valuable time we have for the candidates' comments. So I will allow one big round of applause after I introduce all 4 candidates, and we'll have another one at the very end. So I will introduce the candidates in the order that they drew the numbers. So first we have Mr. Jim Diaz, second Ms. Maria Schulman, third Mr. Richard Inia, and fourth Ms. Letitia Holly Tillman. So we'll start with opening statements, and the first one is to Mr. Diaz.
Well, good evening. We have 1 minute.
1.5 minutes for opening statement.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jim Diaz, currently serving as the mayor and city council member of the city of Clayton. I have lived in Clayton for over 40 years and have served on the city council since 2012. My focus is called basically positioning Clayton for success. To that end, I have 3 goals: public safety, making sure Clayton is a safe community for all members of the community. Number 2, quality of life. The one issue that keeps coming to me is the fact that people generally would like to have Clayton remain with its current character and small town charm. Third, a good listener. I am very approachable. I'm at most all of the events that this city puts on and other organizations. I'm available. People don't have any hesitation about coming up to me and asking a question or expressing their concern. Also, on the columns that I write for both the Gazette and the Pioneer, list my direct email address here at the City of Clayton and my direct telephone number. I thank the League of Women Voters and all of the volunteers of the City of Clayton that helped put this on. Thank you.
Thank you. Second, Ms. Maria Schulman.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Library Foundation. I am Maria Schulman, and I'm running for City Council. My family and I have been residents for nearly 16 years, raising our daughter who attended all the local schools and graduated from Clayton Valley Charter High School. I am the current chair of the Planning Commission and have been on the Planning Commission since 2022. I've also been volunteering in the community for years at the local schools and on the board of the Library Foundation and on the city-sponsored Special Events Committee. I've also participated in Clayton Cleans Up and the Annual Day of Service. I've been a working nurse for 28 years, managing hospice units and dialysis clinics and working with medically fragile and unique needs children, and a 10-year banker before that. In both professions, I found it critical to work collaboratively with diverse populations to solve problems and tackle issues. This is precisely how I will approach my position on the City Council. I will work honestly and diligently for Clayton residents. As an independent thinker, I will do the hard work to make the tough decisions. The community is Clayton's heart and deserves proper accountability and transparency from its leaders. I plan to provide that to this community because its residents deserve someone who prioritizes them.
Thank you. For Mr. Richard Inia.
Thank you. My name is Richard Inia, and I'm also a candidate for City Council. My wife Beth and I raised our children here. They went through all the local schools. I was a police sergeant here until I retired. I was an officer and then a sergeant, so I've spent many, many years here doing that work. And as a policeman, it's all we have is conflict to go to. So I'm very good at listening. I'm very good at resolving problems and keeping people calm. And I look forward to having a calm and professional city council if I happen to be elected to the council. I'm a member of the Clayton Business and Community Association for many years. In fact, our Oktoberfest is coming up this weekend. So hopefully you could all go to it. I'm also, when I was a police officer for all those years, I volunteered my time for the Red Cross, just over by the high school there at Clayton Valley High, and taught many, many kids and adults CPR and first aid. And I enjoy Clayton. We used to do all kinds of stuff here. And I would appreciate your vote. A lot of people know who I am. And I do many things for the community. And I belong to the Elks Club, I belong to the Italian American Club, and several clubs that have Clayton members. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Letitia Tillman?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Holly Tillman, and I'm running for Clayton City Council for my re-election campaign. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Clayton Library Foundation for putting this event on for us this evening. I've been a resident of Clayton for over 21 years, along with my husband, Matt, and we raised our two daughters, Jordan and Jada, here. They've also gone through all of the local schools in our school district. I'm running for re-election because residents need a leader who will listen and fight for all Claytonians, including our hardworking staff. In 2020, I won my seat by standing on a platform centered on transparency, inclusivity, and community. And those were not just a campaign slogan. It's actually what I built my tenure on. I've championed good governance, fiscal stability, and professionalism because we deserve a Clayton that works for everyone and values all residents. I strongly believe that if we work together, we can prioritize public safety, improve wildfire prevention with Firewise that I spearheaded, protect open space and maintain our infrastructure so that Clayton's incredible community resources are accessible for all Claytonians, including our seniors and our disabled children as well. This also requires keeping our staff in place because the constant turnover in City Hall is crippling our city. I'm asking for your vote this November and during this election to help keep us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So those were the opening statements. Now for the next 30 minutes or so, I will try to go through as many questions as we can. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. I've kind of randomized the order in which the questions will be answered. So bear with me as I try to keep track of that. So my first question, where we'll start with Maria Schulman, is many cities are facing budget deficits for the years to come, and Clayton is not immune. Each of you prioritized the Clayton budget in your candidate statements. What are your thoughts on balloting that budget on the revenue side? Would you continue to dip into the city's reserves as was done in the past couple of years? Or would you look for alternative revenue sources such as parcel tax, sales tax, etc.?
On the issue of revenue or parcel tax and sales tax, I am not a proponent to increase any of our taxes. I want to have a thorough line-by-line item look at the budget, and we need to let our Financial Sustainability Committee continue their work and seek out where our issues are on that and find how we are losing the money and what we're spending too much on. And I think as soon as we realize line by line what is wrong, we can correct that and then we can manage it. I'm not a fan of dipping into the reserves, although we do have the reserves. But eventually, I think everything will balance out. Taxes are a last resort.
Thank you. Richard Ania.
Yes, the financial situation is kind of unique to Clayton. We have a budget, and we have over $7 million in reserves. Now, we used $250,000 this year for that, which is not very much. But we have to remember that this city and these councils for years and years and years never budgeted enough money in the budget, and they would go to the reserves. They've been saving that money for who knows why. That's why we have a turnover of people. That's why they just gave a 23% pay raise to the police department over 3 years. That still makes them last in this county as a police department. They're still last after a 23% pay raise because they never got very many raises. Either did the other city employees that work upstairs, and people leave. And I'd like to correct that by putting the money in the budget and not in the reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Diaz.
Go to number. First of all, let me clear up a misconception that the city is in financial straits. That is not true. We've had a couple of different individuals leading the city from a management perspective and giving very different views. Several things. One, championed the appointment of what we call the Community Financial Sustainability Committee. 3 credentialed individuals in the financial area have been appointed to that committee. They work along with the City Budget and Audit Committee and the City Council and the city management to make sure that whatever is needed is there and that we are not overspending. And that's a real simple thing to think about. Not overspending. We're keeping an eye on the financials, and we want to make sure that we have enough money at the end of the day to keep this city functioning very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Holly Tillman.
Thank you. Revenue side. We don't bring in enough revenue in our city. We're limited. And I think a lot of residents don't understand that. I think a lot of residents don't understand that our special districts are underfunded. Yes, we have a large reserve and it's over $7 million. However, given that our police force is over 50% of our budget, many of you guys have noticed that there's been a lot of talk about the weeds in our community and taking care of that. Our trails are in disrepair. If you take a walk on the Cardenay Trail, that has not been, money has not been set aside for that to handle it. We need to have more revenue coming into the city. And the only way to do that is to have staff that we've had, 2 qualified city managers who have told us we will be upside down in a few years. I appreciate that we have that committee that wants to look line by line, but we have to do something now, and I'm in favor of a sales tax.
Thank you. So you all talked a little bit about on the revenue side, and some of you mentioned expenses, and kind of wanted to follow up on that. Is what are your thoughts? The flip side of it is instead of increasing revenues to balance the budget would be to reduce expenses. So what areas would you look at closely if you were elected to the city council? And we'll start with Mr. Richard Ania first.
That's a difficult question because I've worked here for many years in the past, and this budget that we have is very, very lean. One of the things, I was a city councilman and a mayor in another city for 10 years, so I've done several budgets. One of the things I notice here is this city hires a lot of consultants. And I would, if I'm on the council, I would take a serious look at that. They cost a lot of money. And I don't remember many consultants in the 15 years that I was here as a police officer in the past. We haven't grown that much. But anyway, to look at that's the first thing I would look at. We don't have enough police officers, so I'm not looking at that. We don't have enough landscapers. park people, and we're just a bare bones department. In fact, even upstairs in administration, we have double titles for people because we're trying to keep them going and paying them more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Diaz.
Thank you. Regarding expenses, one of my proudest things that occurred in the last 7 to 8 months was the bringing in of an interim city manager who set the stage for what I call, again, positioning Clayton for success. To that end, he really analyzed the staff, because that's their role, is to make sure that we have the right people in the right place. By reorganizing the staff, he was able to save a minimum of $20,000 a year. That goes a long way with our total budget, only about $5 million. That is a lot of money on an individual basis, but certainly for running the city, we're very mindful of that, and we do everything we can to keep within those limits. And we look forward to what the Financial Sustainability Committee can do, along with the Budget and Finance Committee and the city management, along with the city's council providing oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Holly Tillman.
We don't have a $20,000 savings if we have to continue to hire consultants, which is what we have to do. In each meeting since we approved the budget hastily in June, we've actually staff has asked council to extend contracts and expand them. For example, just last night, we were asked to expand a contract for another $50,000. So we aren't saving anything by having vacant seats and constant turnover. And candidate Ania is correct. We're at bare bones. As you can see, we don't have enough staff. We have 26.6 employees. That's not enough staff to handle the city of Clayton and its nearly 12,000 residents to get all of the work done. So yes, some work does need to be contracted out, and you can't cut anything else. We need to increase the revenues so that we can continue to attract and retain employees to stay here to get the work done that our city deserves.
Thank you. Ms. Maria Schulman.
Well, I agree with my colleagues on their answers about we are bare bones. And we do need to increase revenues. It's just how we go about it. And again, it goes back to the budget and looking at it line by line and figuring out if there's anything there. And that's when we need to make that hard decision, if it's a sales tax, if it's a parcel tax. If at all costs, I would like to avoid at least the parcel tax. But again, that's a decision that has to be made when the Budget and Audit Committee and the Financial Sustainability Committee goes through and we get a final result of what is going on within the town. Yes, we are bare bones and we don't have very much.
Thank you. Let's see. So we've talked a little bit about money. So let's turn a little bit to the Clayton community. So if you could, please, and I'll give you the order in which I'm going to ask people to answer beforehand, so you can be prepared. First, this one will go to Mr. Diaz, then to Ms. Tillman, then to Ms. Schulman, and then to Mr. Nia. Describe your involvement in the Clayton community and how that ties in with the Clayton values, and how that involvement in the community makes you qualified to be elected to the city council. Mr. Diaz. You first.
Thank you. First of all, again, as a 40-plus year member of this community, I've been attuned to it. I've seen Clayton grow from about 3,000 people to now nearly 12,000 people. 26-year member of the Clayton Business and Community Association, where I served as the chair of the Art and Wine Festival, chair of the Clayton Golf Tournament, which ran for 30 years. And so I really have a good sense of what's going on out there. I'm involved every day with many things that are taking place within the community. And back to the community involvement, one of my major accomplishments I want to really chime out on is the reopening of Fire Station 11. In case you didn't recall, but during the economic downturn, that station was closed down and was running at a very minimal level. It is now back to full operating status. They are providing all staff services to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tillman.
Yes, our Clayton traits are the do the right thing motto, and there are 7 of them. They're respect, responsibility, kindness, self-discipline, integrity, inclusivity, and courage. And I stand by every single one. It's why I've also been on this committee since I was elected to serve with Peter Cloven, to have all of our students from our local schools, which were the Mount Diablo Elementary School, as well as the Diablo View Middle School, to give them awards for exhibiting those traits. In addition, I also serve as the council liaison to our school district. I served on the I was a liaison to the Clayton Library Foundation and the Trails and Landscape Committee. I spearheaded Firewise communities in our city to help keep us safe and prevent wildfires. I also co-organized the Clayton Pride Parades, Clayton's Day of Service, and our Clayton Speaks webinars back in 2020. I'm the only council member who is endorsed by the United Professional Firefighters of Contra Costa County Local 1230, which actually is part of our station, Fire Station 11. Thank you.
Ms. Schulman.
I have dedicated my entire life to community service and hard work. I've been an active member of the community, volunteering at all the schools. I have also, I'm a board member on the Library Community Foundation. I'm also chair of the Planning Commission, which I've been on since 2022. I have taught my daughter since she was a child that you go out and you help people. We have walked the creeks here, picking up trash, not on any day of service, just to do it. I have often helped elderly people, go grocery shopping for them, take them for rides. I need to join the Clayton Valley Village to do that officially. But during COVID, I also got a hold of N95 masks. I delivered them to local medical offices and physicians when they were having a hard time getting a hold of them. I also have raised money and donations of computers and clothing and bedding and toiletries for Love a Child mission.
Thank you. Mr. Ania.
Thank you. Let me go back to the 90s. I was on the first Community Services Commission here. It's called the Trails Committee now. So I enjoyed that very much. I belong to many things. I'm on the homeowners board for Black Diamond, which is Lower Oakhurst, Indian Wells Way area. The CBCA I've been on for many years and help them all the time. I helped create the Every 15 Minutes program for your children that was at Clayton Valley High School. They still do that, and because we have many Clayton children that were there to teach kids about driving while they're intoxicated, and it works. It's a national program. My son is a 20-year member of the police department here, received many commendations for his help. My daughter is a 911 dispatcher for the fire department. She's been a dispatcher for almost 27 years. So she talks on the phone with many people from Clayton that call for emergencies, knows all the streets and knows the area very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll go in order of Ms. Tillman, Mr. Ania, Mr. Diaz, and Ms. Schulman. All of the current city council members and those running for office this year have expressed their verbal support for the LGBTQ plus community through the Clayton Pride. Do you support the LGBT community in Clayton? And if elected, would you accept an invitation to participate, support, and/or volunteer for next year's Clayton Pride event? How will you support inclusive policies for our marginal community members in general?
I'm the chair of Clayton Pride. So I've been at all of the flag raisings except for the one that was in 2020 because that was during COVID and I was ill. In addition, we're trying to create a 501c3 to make it a nonprofit so that we can continue to have these parades here in town. And as a parent of children who identify and also friends of people who identify, I absolutely support our Clayton Pride parades and the mission of our organization. And we'll be flying that flag every June as far as I can make it happen. I think that answers your question.
Thank you. Mr. Ania?
Yes, I haven't been able to attend the Clayton Pride yet because it falls on the same weekend of the Italian Heritage Days in Pittsburgh, and I'm Italian and have a big family, so I'm gone on that weekend. But I would be, being a policeman for 30 years, I don't see colors and I don't see groups. We're taught that in the police academy 30, 40 years ago. So everyone is the same, if that's what you're asking about. Would you go to this or go to that? I'd go to the 4th of July, go to the Pride. Hopefully we'll have an Italian Heritage weekend. We just had a Hispanic Heritage weekend I was at with the car show. So I'm glad we're doing all of these things.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
Thank you. Yes, I support that LBGTQ community segment within Clayton. To that end, I was on the city council when we voted and approved the raise the flag, the pride flag, each June. Secondly, I was the only member of the city council in 2022 to support, champion, help get elected Ken Carlson, a member of the LBG community, to be the first member of that community on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors. Yes, I'm here, I support. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly support the LGBTQ plus community. I have family members who belong to that community, and in no way would I ever discriminate against them or anybody else. The first parade held here, I was invited to it, and it just happened that I could not get off of work. I was assigned to work. I am a nurse. I couldn't go. The second one, I was ready to go. I was exposed to COVID, and I didn't want to infect anybody. So there you have it. I wholeheartedly support, and I would never discriminate against anybody for any reason.
Thank you. Next question will be Mr. Ania, Ms. Schulman, Mr. Diaz, and Ms. Tillman, in that order. I've heard from a number of residents through the questions. They feel there's been a lot of there's been increased tension and bickering at the city council meetings, where one person said, and I can't verify that, but to the point where it might have become physical. So what will you do to ensure that we'll have an inclusive environment and also a respectful discourse serving as a city council member?
I've been to just about every city council member in person in the last 2 years. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, because council members can be professional and express their opinions and work things out. Did that for 10 years in Crescent City. And we had problems that we discussed and we resolved them. Sometimes it was 3-2, sometimes it's 4-1, sometimes it's 5-0. But this is a professional council. All councils are supposed to be professional. You were alluding to that nearly altercation. That was in the audience. That was not among council members. So you can't pick your audience. You can't pick your audience. But audiences need to be professional too. They need to be professional. It's a small town. We can argue about stuff, but then we move on. We go forward. And we can get along. I certainly will be doing that if I'm on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schulman?
I believe council, as well as the audience, needs to be respectful of one another. We need to use our ears and listen, and we need to understand what each of us is saying. We have to learn how to communicate with each other, and we have to learn to compromise and collaborate. And until that happens, nobody's going to get anything done. And that is the big thing that's been happening, and you see it in almost all the council meetings. There needs to be a mediation, there needs to be training. People need to understand and compromise, collaborate, and just deal with each other, because nobody's going to get along 100% of the time, and that's a fact.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
In the 12 years that I've been involved with city government, both on the planning commission and on the city council, I've attempted as mayor to keep a very professional and open meeting. In those years, only twice have I recalled has there been an issue. The first one was a developer and one of our citizens that got into a confrontation verbally. It didn't escalate to physics, but we had to move them out of the council chambers. The second one was, again, two citizens who disagreed on some point, not what we were talking about from the city council. We need to have decorum. We need to have respect. That helps us move things forward for you and all of the community here in Clayton. Thank you.
Ms. Tillman?
I concur that the near altercations were in the audience, and I don't think that you necessarily have to have a 5-0 consensus on the council, but you do have to have a dialogue and collaborate and discuss things. I think where you see, if you happen to see any tension, it probably comes from frustration and that discussions aren't taking place, and it seems like the votes are already decided before people come and sit at the dais. I've been asking for governance training, ethics training, et cetera, because I think it's important for our council to have that and for us to move forward together as a community with that. And we are leaders in our community, and our constituents are looking to us to actually lead by example. And so even if there's altercations out in the audience, it is up to the mayor with the gavel to make sure that there's decorum in the chambers. And they should ask for civility before each meeting, just as then Mayor Clayton did, but that was abolished in 2022.
Thank you. Let's see, next question. Ms. Tillman, Mr. Diaz, Mr. Ania, and then Ms. Schulman. We've gotten some questions. Well, we've got a lot of questions for the audience here, but we also had people emailing us questions. And so one of the questions that came out of that is, how do you plan to address the high cost of living for Clayton residents?
If only I had a magic wand and I can do that. It's expensive to live in the Bay Area, so I can't control that. Our city can't control that. Even with the organizations that we have in town who do try to help many of our residents. We have Adopt a Family with the CBCA. I'm a CBCA member as well. You have the Clayton Valley Village, which tries to help seniors. The high cost of living is not something that the council can fix, but can we try to have businesses in town and attract more businesses here to give jobs to local residents? Sure, that's something that I believe that we should be doing, but we need to have an economic development committee that's formed. That was also abolished a couple of years ago, or not abolished, but gotten rid of. Those are all the things that we can do as council members, is try to attract and retain businesses here in our city and to provide employment. And I think any new developments that we might have here, whether or not it's unions actually building the buildings that we zone for, that's work for them. I think that's great. But we can't actually give them salaries unless they're our employees.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. The high cost of living, we can have only so much effect or impact on that. We must conform with rules and directions from the state of California. The interest rates that are now finally to begin coming down, again, were not something that the city council had any control over. That's a federal matter, but they're starting to come down. The housing market in Clayton is one of the most desirable areas to move to. Things have slowed down, but they're starting to turn around now, and new people are starting to move in. It's a little higher bar to get in, but they are. This city would benefit from having a citizen economic development committee made up of genuine business leaders and owners who can provide with ideas on how to attract, retain businesses and other development in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ania?
Thank you. We have a little bit of business coming. They closed that postal annex by Safeway, but UPS is coming. There's a UPS store right down the street in Concord. They're going to take over that business. Also, the new restaurant coming downtown, that's 2. That's pretty big for a small town. So, but on a negative side, our shopping center is for sale. Not a lot of people know that. And so businesses are hesitant about coming in those few vacancies that we have there because they don't know how much the rent's gonna be as a new developer takes that over, not developer, but company. But another new business just came in, and in fact, they're gonna join the CBCA, and it's called Stretch. It's right next to the little wine cafe there by the Travis Credit Union, and that just opened. So we do have some businesses that are coming in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schulman?
I have long said that we need some economic development, and I think it's vital that the city promote the businesses that we do have. And in the same way, we need to do some attraction for new business, either by business license discount or some other discount to attract a business here, whether it be an entrepreneur or some home-based business, but to bring something here. And as far as the shopping center, whomever buys it or wants to redevelop it, we should work with them into doing a complex of housing and retail development, because it's at a perfect position on that corner for housing. It's got the transportation there, so that would help bring in some money and revenue to the city.
Thank you. So my original cost was around high cost of living, but I think all of you kind of pivoted towards, how can we make Clayton more attractive to businesses and other people who might want to live there, which I think hopefully people will want to hear about as well. Let's see, I'm probably going to be a bit about, no, I think I can do 2 more. So a couple of questions that we've gotten is people feel in certain parts of Clayton and their neighborhoods, they feel that the roads and the asphalt is kind of reaching a critical stage of disrepair, as they call it. And so how would you propose to address this, and would it be a priority for you if you were elected to city council? And we'll do, let's see, Ms. Schulman, then Mr. Ania, Mr. Diaz, and then Ms. Tillman.
Well, I know currently the council is working on streets and infrastructure. There's been they've been looking at the quality of asphalt. Again, the city does not have a lot of money, and they have to do certain streets at certain times. So it would depend on what the grade of the street was and the priority at that time. And of course, if elected, you would have to look. It's part of the priority. It's part of giving the residents what they need. I mean, if it's in bad shape, you have to come up with something. And there are some funds for infrastructure that could be used for streets.
Thank you, Mr. Ania.
It's always an issue. We had that in Crescent City for a long time. But Clayton, I believe, has prioritized some streets. Councilmember Tillman and Diaz could talk about that, I'm sure. But there are some priorities and where they are on the list, and that can be changed if it's worse. My street, I had to have the sewer company come out, the county one, because the sewer was higher than the road. You ever hit that? One of those? Oh man, I was so upset over that. I called everybody. And they finally came and they fixed it. But there are streets that are bad. I drive them all the time. And they're not terrible, because I've been on terrible streets, but not in Clayton. But there is a plan, and I'm sure we would address it.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
Yes, thank you. One of the things I think that the city and the city council did to address a lot of the issues that we're sort of talking about peripherally here is that we brought in, after our last community development director resigned and went on to a future project, We brought in the firm, the Four Leaf Company. They are professionals. They are working on things that will help this community thrive, grow, and become even better than what we inherited when we took over Clayton. We look forward to more development. We look forward for some more incentives to help people get through this maze of how to grow your business, how to get Clayton back on track. It is one of the jewels of the Bay Area, and we want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tillman.
Thank you. So, yes, our roads are in disrepair. You just have to drive over a couple of potholes in any of the neighborhoods. You can see that the pavement, the repaving has a lot of them have horrible jobs that were done on them. And that's part of the problem when you put a lot of your extra funds into your reserves instead of actually making capital improvements in your city. And that's why we have a reserve that's over $7 million. So we have health reserves, but we're not addressing our city's needs. So our streets need to be repaved, but instead of just overlaying them like we have been doing, we almost need to start from scratch and bring it up and start all over again. And we wouldn't have the constant potholes that we do have. It's also a matter of, excuse me, accessibility. So if we're not addressing those needs for our residents, being able to get by easily, we've had to increase our sidewalk repairs because that's ADA, they're not ADA compliant. That also takes into account that. And those are two priorities that I have of mine this year is safety and accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get to our final question, and then I'll have some closing remarks, and we'll have closing statements by the candidates. So we've heard you talk about a lot of things tonight, and so I think I'd like to close with this final question, just as a summary to the residents who you'll be asking your vote for, is what are your top 3 priorities if you were elected to the City Council? And order will be Mr. Diaz, Ms. Tillman, Ms. Schulman, and Mr. Ania.
Thank you. My 3 top priorities, I've stated, they're in my candidate statement. 1, public safety. Keep Clayton one of the safest communities in the whole Bay Area, and it is. Number 2, quality of life. We enjoy. That's why we came out here. That's why we're living in Clayton. The quality of life is something that we want and enjoy. I want to make sure that Clayton retains that character, that small town feel. There are some places in the community for growth, and we're looking into those. And then the last thing is to be available to take your questions and comments and answer them so that you have a better understanding of just which direction Clayton is headed. I want to say once again, my top accomplishments: reopening Fire Station 11, bringing our police department in better financial situation with the general county, and putting our new city manager in place who will lead us to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tillman.
My 3 are public safety, accessibility, and our beautiful neighborhoods. And I'll just dive into those a little bit. And this is not our closing statement, right? No. Okay, thank you. Public safety for me is not just about having a fully funded police force here in our town. It's also about making sure that we have fire prevention, which is why I spearheaded Firewise. I think it's important for residents to actually help us keep our city safe. A lot of us were here when we had the fire in the mid-2000s. And it was almost cresting over Mount Diablo, heading towards town. It's not fun, and it's actually scary. That's one. The accessibility, I just answered in the prior question. Making sure that our roads are safe, making sure that we have accessibility with our sidewalks and improving those so that not only our aging residents, but also anyone with disabilities can conveniently get through town, and keeping our beautiful neighborhoods and trails. We've neglected them for far too long, and our residents need to understand how that's funded through our landscape maintenance district, and that's what I want to make sure everyone understands.
Thank you. Ms. Schulman.
My top 3 priorities are, again, I would say managed growth and safety, as well as our finances. without our city being financially stable, we're not going to be able to have the safe roads. We're not going to be able to have the growth and development that we need. So we need to address these so that we, as a community, are able to grow and thrive. And we all want to be safe. So we need to have that financial stability so that we can have those things.
Thank you, Mr. Ania.
My three, and not necessarily in a certain order: finances, of course, safety, both fire and public and police, and making sure that our parks and playgrounds are in good order, and that goes along with quality of life. For fire, I don't know if you know, there was a pretty good sized fire up Deschaux Valley the other day behind the houses. Fire department responded immediately. They have helicopters stationed at Buchanan Field, and they put that out right away. So we have resources. Police department, I retired 20 years ago, until today, it's still today, we have the same number of officers. We need one more, at least one more. Part of that would be traffic. And let me say this quickly. The chief got together with the Concord police chief the other day. They were working a traffic grant, Concord is. He loaned 3 motorcycle officers to Clayton last week. Do you know how many tickets they wrote in 4 hours? In Clayton, 40 tickets. And that's a major complaint here in Clayton.
Thank you. So many of you had completed question cards, and so I apologize to those in the audience whose questions I did not get. Hopefully, we were able to fold them into other questions we asked tonight. There were too many questions, like I said. After this candidate forum, we do plan to have a presentation about the pros and cons of the ballot propositions for this November. But, you know, if you have other questions, I'd suggest to contact the candidates. I know that there were a lot of questions asked through the Clayton Pioneer that each of the candidates has responded to. So hopefully, if I didn't ask your question, maybe your question was in there. I try not to overlap too much. So at this point, we'll get to the closing statements. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for a closing statement, and we will begin in the reverse order of the opening statement. So we'll start with Ms. Tillman.
Great. Thank you again for hosting. As I mentioned at the outset, I'm running for re-election because I'm the only one who is running this year who will speak up for our staff to ensure that they stay in City Hall and try to get to the bottom of why they all left this last spring. I've requested that for over a year before it happened, and it's fallen on deaf ears. I stand for good governance, fiscal stability, and professionalism. I also want to prioritize public safety, accessibility, improve our wildfire prevention, protect our open space, and maintain our infrastructure so that Clayton's incredible community resources are accessible for all. I'm the only council member who's honored to be endorsed by trusted local leaders like Contra Costa County Supervisor Ken Carlson, Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, School Board Member Sharice Cound, and 8 former Clayton mayors. They all share my vision for Clayton. I've also received endorsements from the building trades in Contra Costa, building and construction trades, the Democratic Party of Contra Costa County, the Labor Council, the firefighters of Local 1230, and numerous Clayton residents. I think it's really important that everyone also understands that I increased the police officer salaries to recruit and retain high-quality officers. I also approved the funding for an additional police sergeant, and I advocated for responsible budgeting. But that doesn't mean ramming through a budget without us actually understanding the numbers and where they are. I think that several council members and even candidates will now learn how difficult it is to get your financial house in order when you don't have the staff in place to actually make sure that that can happen. The constant turnover is crippling our city, and I'm the only person who's vocal enough about that to stop it from happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ania.
Yes, regarding the police department again, they did add a 4th sergeant, but not from outside. That person was promoted. So you still have the same number of officers 20 years ago today. So we need an additional one. Traffic proves that, among other things that the officer could do. There's plenty of work. The staff, when the city manager, the last city manager came, he was here for 7 months. I went to a couple of his coffees. I don't know if you did too. to introduce himself and stuff. One of the things he said that really bothered me at the time was someone asked him, if you don't get your way with the council and they don't implement stuff, what will you do? He said, I would take my staff and leave. And he did that. He took his staff and left. I have never heard of that. And part of that was because he picked his staff. There weren't interviews like we usually do. So we'd have to get into it why. But another part of it is money. If you're not making good money, why stay at a place when you're last in salaries? Last in salaries. So that's not very good. But I would hope that you would vote for me. I'm my own person. I'm independent, and I listen. My phone number is listed on my brochure. That's my regular number. And if I make the council, when you call me, if you lose that number and you call the city hall, it goes to a tape, my phone will be attached to that, and I'll answer you.
Thank you, Ms. Schulman.
Thank you.
I'm asking for your vote in November because I believe city council should represent all of the residents of Clayton. And we must bring back to our local community government trust. Right now, we're lacking trust, we're lacking transparency, we're lacking respect. And I think this community, which has a heart of gold, needs and wants and deserves that respect, that collaboration, that unity. And I am running because I don't know if any of you are tired of what is going on, but I am. And that's why I stood up and said, okay, I'm going to run. Because somebody and something needs to take responsibility and say, okay, I can get in there and do the tough work and make the tough decisions and do my due diligence and get the job done. And I know there's other people on council who would work just as hard to get the job done. And I am seriously hoping that I can be one of them. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters from Diablo Valley for putting on this forum. It's important for you, the citizens, to hear from us directly. And they have done an excellent job. They're always here during the election period. I want to thank the citizens as well of Clayton for trusting me on this city council since 2012. I have done my best to make sure Clayton remains safe so we can all live and prosper well, that we have an excellent quality of life where that Clayton community, that small town character and charm continues. We will have some growth, but we want to maintain that small town charm and character. I am approachable. I'm a good listener. You have access to me not only on email, but my direct telephone line, and I get calls every week about various issues, from changing the sidewalks to allowing for ADA accessibility and others. And I want to also convey to you that we now have the excellent and most capable city management staff that has taken the lead from the city council for their oversight, leading us today and into the future. I thank you, and I look for your vote in November.
Thank you to all the candidates. As I said in the beginning, let's have one big round of applause for our candidates. So I want to thank our co-host, the Clayton Library Foundation, for co-hosting with us, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley. We obviously could not do that without a co-host, so we really appreciate that. And I want to thank you, the audience, for engaging in the democratic process with your respectful attention and thoughtful questions. And as I said, I hope we got to most of them. Be sure to vote on or before Tuesday, November the 5th. And for information about early voting, go to contracostavote.gov. And for more information about these candidates and other candidates that are on your ballot, as well as propositions, go to vote411.org. That's a service that is run by the League of Women Voters. That's now nationally. And, I'll do one more round of applause and let me go through the list as I got them, as they were listed on the Elections Department official list. Letitia Holly Tillman, Jim Diaz, Richard Inia, and Maria Schulman. Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying for the pros and cons presentation. We're talking about the 10 propositions that are on the ballot this year. And my name is Anna Pan, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. And you've met Paul. Paul is also a League member and super important guy, because he's our treasurer, and he's been with the league for 5 years?
6.
6 years, excuse me. Your bio needs updating.
Okay.
He, along with being our treasurer, he's in a variety of committees, pros and cons committee, mis and disinformation, I don't know, just a lot of them.
Yeah.
He brings about 25 years of professional experience, primarily in the technology area, and he has worked on many large projects, and I don't remember any more than that, other than it was technology related.
So yeah, I always kind of, when we go around internally, I always introduce myself as the resident techie. So I try to help, introduce some new technologies that I've worked with in the past.
And some of us are better than others at accepting that help. I bring about 25 years of business experience at the executive level in human resources, and formally joined the League about a year ago, have supported it financially all of my life, but really wanted to get involved this year in terms of just really putting the effort in where my beliefs lie. So I love this league, and I'm happy to be a part of it. One thing I think we can, so the League of Women Voters, who are we? The League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, we're over 100 years old, and we're a nonpartisan organization. We believe in encouraging informed and active participation in government. And one thing I really want to stress is the fact that the League never, ever, in its 104-year history, has ever endorsed a candidate or a party. We feel very strongly about remaining nonpartisan. And so you probably heard me even asking some folks to remove their badges and things like that, because we really want to make it a very welcoming environment for anybody who wants to join us. Today we will actually have our education hats on. We do influence public policy through education and advocacy. And we invite anyone who would like to join us in the league to come and have lunch with us. We usually have lunch on,
Second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday of the month. And we would love to have you come and pitch in. So what are pros and cons? This is a way that we want to present the information in a very orderly way. So you will see the issues, which, what is this trying to change? The context, how does it fit? And the arguments for and against. In addition to that, you will also see there is additional research that's occurred, and so that we could provide you information as to who has donated to the various propositions, who's supporting it, and who the opposition is and what their donations have been. And because we really want everyone to make an informed decision. And we think this is the best way to do that. So there are 10 state ballot measures in the November 2024 election. And 5 of them are initiatives that have been, that are citizen initiatives. And there are 5 of them that have been placed on the ballot by the legislature. And the legislature, per the California Constitution, is required to put certain ballot measures before the voters. And an example is anytime that you want to change the California Constitution, you have to put that in front of the voters. The citizens initiatives are typically gathered, that's where you have the signatures gathering and people who are trying to get support for a particular proposition. Those are the citizens initiatives, and those are on the ballot as well. So there's 5 and 5.
All right.
Oh, you want, okay.
So, you know, a lot of our research came through Ballotpedia. We looked at Cal Matters, and we looked at the Legislative Analyst Office, trying to find as many resources to support the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's jump in on the first one.
I would just say one thing, that there's a lot of analysis that occurs by the League of Women Voters California. So there's a state group that does a great deal of analysis, and then we augment that analysis with the other sources as well.
Right, thank you. So the first proposition, and we've kind of been using proposition and measurements or measures interchangeably, but it's really the state propositions and like local measures. But you know, a lot of times they're similar, so you'll hear us use both words. So Proposition 2 is a bond for public school and community college facilities. I think many of you know that many of the schools and colleges are in need of repairs, renovations, and new classrooms, and state government helps to raise the money to help build and repair those facilities by selling those bonds. So this proposition allows the state to sell up to $10 billion in bonds to help build and repair schools. Up to 8.5 billion would go to K through 12 schools, and 1.5 billion would go to community colleges. So what are the fiscal effects? According to the Legislative Analyst Office, the state would need to spend about $500 million per year for the next 35 years to repay those bonds. The effects on the local government really depends on, you know, what the different school districts decide and the colleges decide to do. So they'll have their own lists. So what do the supporters say? And I'll mention one thing, is that even if the state provides bond money, the local districts would still have to provide 40 to 50% match or equivalent, however you want to call that, before they can tap into that bond money from the state. So what do the supporters say? The bonds will help pay for badly needed repairs and security improvements, thereby making the schools and communities safer. It includes broadband access, HVAC, plumbing, and structural improvements. There is something in the bond that says a lower contribution could be required from poorer districts. What do the opponents say? Well, they say Prop 2 makes taxpayers pay bond interest for many, many years, as we said in the intro, up to 35 years, and they feel it will go to wasteful construction projects instead of to actual classroom instruction. So some additional information. I talked about the 40 to 50% of the cost. Some opposition is based on the inequity of the system, which is why that was built into the bond. But supporters say that it adds to improved schools, which results in improved test scores, improved attendance at the school, and hopefully result in fewer suspensions. So what have we seen in terms of contributors and funders to both the supporting and opposing this measure? Supporting is the California building industry. Yes on Prop 2, which is a coalition of adequate school housing Issues Committee, the Association of California School Administrators, California Alliance for Jobs, and miscellaneous smaller donations for a total of about 2.4 million. And this was from a couple of days ago, so it could be more than that. As we go through this season, we'll probably update it, but you're all kind of in the beginning of our cycle. There's no funding that we could find from the opposing side, but the Harvard-Jarvis Tax Association is opposing the bond measure.
And I would just add in terms of Prop 2, that when Paul mentioned that there's an inequity in the way that the schools get funded, the reason for that is that in a neighborhood that is maybe doesn't have, that's economically disadvantaged, for example, that neighborhood is going to have a much more difficult time trying to get a bond measure passed to add taxes to, the community, the property taxes. And so the legislature did make a small adjustment, but it's really not meaningful in terms of the disadvantaged communities do not have to raise as much money. They're basically are going to get kind of like a 5% break. And the state will pick up that extra amount, but.
Right, and it's also a little bit of a race, the school districts that have more involvement and are a little better positioned. They already know what kind of projects they want to do, which might not necessarily be the case for all districts.
And so that's the inequity that has been discussed and that has been a bit of a point of contention. So Prop 3 is relatively easy to figure out. So it's a constitutional right to marriage. And the question before the voter is, should the California Constitution be amended to define marriage as a fundamental right for all, regardless of sex or race, and remove language that states that marriage is only between a man and a woman? All right. So the situation is that the Constitution, the California Constitution says that only marriage between a man and a woman is legal. And the U.S. Supreme Court, as you know, actually ruled that it is unconstitutional to say that marriage is only between a man and a woman, and that same-sex couples must be treated the same as opposite-sex couples. And in California, same-sex couples can get married. But we still have this language in our Constitution. So the proposal is to amend the Constitution to enshrine marriage equality regardless of gender, sexual orientation, or race. And in terms of a fiscal effect, there really isn't one that anybody could identify. Supporters say the California Constitution should affirm marriage equality, which is the law of the United States. So basically, let's clean up the language. Prop 3 protects the fundamental right to marry regardless of gender or race. Opponents say same-sex marriage is already legal, so there's no need to change California's Constitution. And they're also saying that Prop 3 removes all rules for marriage, opening the door to child marriages, incest, and polygamy. In terms of more information, as you know, in 2008, Prop 8 amended the state constitution. That's when it amended it to say that marriage was only between a man and a woman, which now, of course, we know violates the U.S. Constitution. I'd like to add that incest, polygamy, it is still illegal, and that this change in the language of the California Constitution doesn't change any of the laws that govern those two things. And marriage under age 18 is still illegal, regardless of the change in the Constitution, and it's illegal without parental and court approval. You have to be age 18 to make those decisions for yourself. In terms of people or groups that support Prop 3, you see a list here. Kevin DeLeon, Believing in a Better California Ballot Measure Committee, and his name appears a couple of times on several different propositions. Yes on Proposition 3, sponsored by Equality California, Federated Indians of Grafton Rancheria, California Federation of Teachers, ACLU of Northern California, California Works, Senator Tony Atkins Committee, and Planned Parenthood. And so I thought that there was a total on here, but so you can see the various amounts that the different groups collected. In terms of opposition, there's the California Family Council and the American Council of Evangelicals. No money was raised, but they do oppose the change in language.
So I tried to quickly add it up. It is around $4 million that the supporters raised for this proposition.
Paul's just showing off because he can do math in his head.
I do it in my head. My wife always tells me she will not do it in her head because she's an accountant, and she says, I can't make mistakes, so I use a calculator. Prop 4, so this is another bond measure. This is a bond that authorizes a bond for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. So the question is, should voters let the state sell up to $10 billion in bonds for various projects to reduce climate risks and its impacts? So the situation is that climate change is negatively impacting all Californians, but especially people with low incomes. The proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds for the projects for water, wildfire, coastal resilience, fish, wildlife, clean air, and to mitigate extreme heat. The fiscal impacts have been estimated that the state would pay about $4 million per year for the next 40 years to repay the bond. Protecting natural resources could reduce costs of future damage. So the proponents say it will help protect our communities, our health, and the economy. The opponents say that the bonds are the most expensive way to fund government spending and should not be used. Prop 4 provides for funding for unproven technologies with no real evidence of success. So contributors and other funders of the supporters and opponents. So the supporters include Clean Action, National Wildlife Federation, California Professional Firefighters, and the California Labor Federation, and miscellaneous small donors have raised almost $650,000. The opponents, as we saw with Prop 2, include the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, Senate GOP leader Brian Jones, Assembly member Jim Patterson, and as we said, we could not find funding so far against this proposition.
And I would just add on Prop 4 and the other proposition that typically the reason that you see bonds is it's rather the equivalent of a mortgage, if you will. You can't do large-scale infrastructure type of work in a state without borrowing. And that's what bonds are. You're borrowing money to get that done.
And I think one of the things that with the research that we've done, we found that, about 40 years ago, we had like $1 billion disaster, like maybe every 4 years or so. Now we have it about every 3 weeks. I mean, that's how it has changed over the years.
Okay. Prop 5. Prop 5 is allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure. And with a 55% voter approval. So what the question is, should local bond measures to fund housing bonds for low and middle income Californians and public infrastructure projects be allowed to pass with 55% voter approval instead of the currently required 66.7% approval? The situation is, current law requires 66.7% of voters to vote yes to pass a local bond measure. Affordable housing is a key issue across the state. And the proposal is, let's lower the voting requirement so that some types of local bond measures can pass with a 55% of the vote. There's little effect on the state budget, but it would impact local budgets because, again, local measures would, in order to raise matching funds, would require more debt. Prop 5 decreases the vote requirement for local housing, and supporters say Prop 5 gives local communities more tools to make housing affordable and will allow local voters to address community needs such as housing and safe streets. Opponents say Prop 5 changes existing protections from high debt caused by bond issues in the California Constitution. Prop 5 pushes cost of infrastructure onto local governments and taxpayers. In terms of additional information, California faces significant shortage of affordable housing. Lowering voter threshold to pass affordable housing and infrastructure bonds helps local governments meet state mandates for new housing units. And it does include a ban on using bond funds to buy single-family homes to convert into affordable units. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about multi-family housing, not single-family housing. Opposition to Prop 5, California Association of Realtors, National Association of Realtors, California Business Roundtable, California Business Properties Association, and Gerald J. Marcel. I actually looked up who this person was. He's a developer. Supporters of Prop 5, California Professional Firefighters, and Habitat for Humanity. One of the sort of additional information on Prop 5 would be that the feeling is that having such a high amount of, high percentage for voter approval is problematic because it's almost impossible to get that number, that percentage of people to agree on anything. And that what you have in that situation where you require 66.7% to approve it, is you have basically 1/3 of the voting population saying, we don't want this, where you may have 2/3 or almost 2/3 who say that they do. And so it's a small number of people who can basically say no, and we're not going to do this. Gosh, there was one more point on this.
We'll come back to that when she, so Prop 6 is also referenced as the End Slavery in California Act, and it would eliminate any constitutional provisions allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons. So the question to the voters is, should the California Constitution be amended to remove the provision that allows involuntary servitude to be used as punishment for a crime, prohibit punishment for refusing a work assignment, and allow voluntary work assignments in exchange for credit to reduce sentences? So the situation is that the current Constitution prohibits forced labor except as punishment for a crime. 16 states, including California, allow this exception. The proposal is to amend the Constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude for any reason, prohibit disciplining people in prison who refuse a work assignment. The fiscal effects on state and local costs are uncertain at this point. Any effect unlikely to exceed tens of millions of dollars a year, which is still a good chunk of money, but in the big picture of California, maybe they consider it a small amount. So the supporters say that Proposition 6 would restore human dignity by ending forced labor, which constitutes essentially slavery and violates human rights. It improves public safety by focusing on rehabilitation of incarcerated people. The opponents say there was no argument filed from opponents to Proposition 6. The supporters include All of Us or Non-Action Network, ACLU of Northern California, Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, and miscellaneous donations for a total of about $320,000. Other supporters included the California Teachers Association and the California Black Legislative Caucus, who had put this before the legislation as part of a bigger package initially. We could not find any funding for opponents, but the Howard Jarvis Tax Association opposes this proposition.
I would add, in terms of additional information, that some of these individuals who are incarcerated are paid 75 cents an hour for the work that they do. And as an example, the individuals who go out and risk their lives fighting fires may receive up to $10 a day for their efforts.
So that's one of the reasons why the impact is very uncertain, because it is yet to be determined how those people would be paid, whether it continues under the current arrangement or if like federal laws regarding minimum wages could kick into this, whether it's federal or state. So that's where the impact is very unknown at this point.
And the federal minimum wage is less than $8 an hour. But obviously there would be a fiscal impact. But so that's a little bit of an additional information on that. On Proposition 32, so the question is, should California raise its statewide minimum wage to $18 an hour by January 1st, 2026, and then each year thereafter based on inflation? So the situation is the statewide minimum wage is currently $16 an hour. Certain industries and cities have higher minimum wages. As an example, in fast food, it's a minimum $20 an hour. For healthcare workers, I believe it was between $23 and $25 an hour. And so those individuals already have higher levels of pay. And this would not change that. It would not lower their pay. The proposal is raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour for all employees by 2026. Wage would adjust for cost of living each year thereafter, starting after 2026. And it would not lower wages for people who are already making over $18 an hour, as I said. Fiscal effect, there are fiscal effects. Higher wages for state and local employees will increase government costs. Revenues will likely decrease, and lower use of Medi-Cal and CalFresh, which are state programs, could potentially save hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's really unknown, because individuals who are now earning more money, higher annual salary, might become ineligible for those programs. So that's how they feel that it could lower the use of those programs and therefore save the state money. Supporters say raising the minimum wage will improve the standard of living for millions of workers and promote economic fairness. Opponents say raising the minimum wage will hurt businesses, raise prices, and cause job losses, and taxes may be raised if governments pay more wages. So some of the supporters are Working Hero Action for the Living Wage, Kevin DeLeon, Believing in a Better California Ballot Measure Committee, for a total of $10.8 million that they raised. Opponents, Californians Against Job Losses and Higher Prices, No 132, and they raised $10,000.
All right, Proposition 33. This would expand the local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. So the question is, should the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, which is a state law, be repealed so local governments can regulate rents? So the current situation is that the state law prevents rent control on single-family homes and housing built after early 1995. Some cities have rent control laws limiting how much landlords can increase rents. The proposal is to remove the law that prohibits rent control on single-family homes and stop the state from limiting local governments from having rent control. The fiscal effects are estimated to be little on the state budget, but it could impact local budgets. It will really depend on how many cities and counties pass rent control laws and then what landlords will do. So the supporters say that Prop 33 will allow local governments to protect renters, and local voters will be able to decide on whether and how to control rents, because even if it goes to the local government, the voters still have a say in that. Opponents say that Prop 33 will increase the cost to build housing, therefore making the state's housing crisis even worse. Prop 33 will drive up costs for renters and home buyers. So what we found in terms of supporters and contributions, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation raised about $30.5 million in support of this proposition. Kevin DeLeon for Lieutenant Governor contributed about $600,000. United Here 11, and then miscellaneous small deductions for a total of $31.2. Other supporters include renters and homeowners for rent control, yes on 33, and Kevin DeLeon again with Believing in a Better California. The opposition and contributions include the California Apartment Association, the California Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, and the California Association of Realtors Issues Mobilization PAC. So those all together raised about $48 million out of the total of $53.9 million. So other opposition includes the Michael K. Haight, which includes Western National Group and affiliated entities, and other miscellaneous donations.
And it's important to pay attention to the fact that Prop 33 and Prop 34 are connected. And you heard that one of the big supporters of Prop 33 was the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And they were a big contributor in support of rent control. And you also saw that the California Apartment Association and other real estate interests opposed Prop 33. If you look at Prop 34, you'll see that there's some very, I think, interesting language in terms of who is going to be covered by Prop 34. So the question for Prop 34 is, should certain, underline certain, healthcare providers be required to spend 98% of revenues from a federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care? And should the state be permanently authorized to negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices? The situation, healthcare providers earn revenues from a federal drug discount program, and then these providers, they decide how to spend the income. And Medi-Cal provides coverage to people with low incomes, if you weren't aware of that. The proposal create new rules about how certain healthcare providers spend money earned from the drug discount program. And it allows the state to permanently negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices. In terms of a fiscal impact, it could be millions of dollars to identify and punish providers who violate the law. Fines will likely be imposed on those providers. Supporters say Prop 34 will ensure money from the discounted drug program is used for direct patient care. Currently, those proceeds can be used in any way that provider feels is appropriate given their mission. Prop 34 will make the discount program permanent, which means currently at whatever rate that those taxes are, those dollars from the direct patient care, from the discounted drug program, that would remain at that level forever. Currently, the state legislature actually can change that contribution or that tax amount and how much they're going to take and what they're going to use it for. And Prop 34 basically says this is how it's going to get used, and this is how it's going to be forever, basically, until somebody can change the law again, if that ever happens. So opponents say Prop 34 targets one healthcare provider that supports rent control. And we also wanted to say that federal law allows profits from drug discounts to support any nonprofit mission of healthcare providers. So currently they have more latitude, and this would take that away. Supporters are Yes on 34, Protect Patients Now, 14.9 million, and the California Apartment Association. Opponents are Stop the Revenge Initiative, No on 34, 120,000, and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And in terms of Stop the Revenge Initiative, the idea here being that initiatives were not supposed to just simply target one group. And what this says is that its potential is that you can have somebody who's very well funded basically go after anybody who wants to put an initiative on the ballot that they disagree with.
All right, so, Anna talked about, in the previous proposition about Medi-Cal, and so, in the rest of the country that is known as Medicaid, and that's really the biggest health insurance program in the United States that has over 80 million enrollees, which includes both Medicaid and the Children's Health Program, CHIP. 1 in 5 Americans is on Medicaid, and it's basically the largest revenue source for the states. So Proposition 5, it would provide permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services. So the question is, should California make permanent an existing tax on managed healthcare plans to provide ongoing funding for Medi-Cal and other healthcare services? The current situation is that California pays for parts of its share of Medi-Cal through a temporary tax on managed care organizations, also known as MCOs. So the proposal is to make the temporary tax permanent and create new rules for how the tax money can actually be spent. The fiscal effects are estimated to increase an increase of about $2 to $5 billion per year to fund Medi-Cal and other healthcare programs. and additional costs to cover services not included in this Proposition 35. Supporters say that, and this is a typo, and we will unfortunately not be able to correct it, but it means Prop 35 will support health services and improve access to doctors that help low-income people. Opponents say there were no arguments filed officially against Prop 35. Some additional information: the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board opposes Prop 35, and some of the main reasons they included is that they consider it ballot box budgeting, and it would eliminate the flexibility of the legislature to determine how money is spent as state income fluctuates over the years. This would require a 3/4 vote in both legislative houses to change the law, or a new proposition that would go to the voters for any change. Federal government has basically warned California that Prop 35 is trying to exploit the system, and therefore they think that funding could be reduced in future years. Supporters include the California Hospital Committee on Issues, Global Medical Response, California Medical Association, California Primary Care Association, Air Methods Corporation, Ultimate Health Services Corporation, California Dental Association, Family Health Center of San Diego, and miscellaneous other donations, for a total of, it's kind of in the corner, but it's almost $49 million. The opponents include the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, the Children's Partnership, California Alliance for Retired Americans, and Courage California, and we were not able to find any reported donations for Prop 35.
Prop 36, this is I think an interesting proposition. So the question is, should California allow people to be charged with felonies for possessing certain drugs and for thefts under $950 if the defendant has 2 prior drug or theft convictions? The situation, if you remember, back in 2014, a ballot measure turned nonviolent crimes like drug possession and shoplifting into misdemeanors unless someone had prior convictions for serious crimes. The proposal is to turn some misdemeanors back into felonies and lengthen sentences and require some sentences to be served in prison. And by studying this proposition, I learned that there's a difference between jail and prison. Prison is at the state level, and jail would be like in, a local county or city. What's the fiscal impact? Increased state and local costs for prisons, jails, and mental health and drug treatment, likely between tens to hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And the reason for that is because one of the things that happened when the law in 2014 was passed is that a lot of people didn't end up having to go to prison or to jail because it was prosecuted as a misdemeanor versus a felony. And what this does is that it automatically takes 2 misdemeanors, and on the third one, sort of a third strike, you now have a felony. And the punishment for that is going to be prison, and it's going to probably increase the prison population as a result. Supporters say Prop 36 makes communities safer by holding repeat thieves accountable and making thieves and drug dealers serve tougher sentences. Opponents say Prop 36 would make California less safe by stopping crime prevention and drug treatment programs, and that Prop 36 would cost taxpayers billions. Opponents say Prop 36 erodes criminal justice reform by reversing advances aimed at reducing mass incarceration. It imposes stricter sentencing laws that disproportionately impact lower income and people of color. and that it shifts dollars from treatment and rehab to prisons. Supporters of Prop 36, yes on 36, Californians for safer communities, Californians for safe stores and neighborhoods, and you'll see a lot of big box names here. Walmart, 2.5 million, Target, 1.5 million, Home Depot, 1 million, California Business Roundtable, 370,000, 7-Eleven, 300,000. Opponents of Prop 36, Committee to Protect Public Safety, no on 36, 195,000, and the ACLU Northern California, 100,000. Some additional information on Prop 36. Prop 36 rolls back parts of Prop 47, passed in 2014, intended to reduce prison overcrowding. It reclassifies some misdemeanors into felonies. It imposes harsher sentences for drug possession and retail theft, and shifts incarceration from county jail to state prison. And I know that you've probably seen commercials for in support of Prop 36, and they'll show, for example, the smash and grab situations occurring. And I don't think it's on here, but the case is that those would always be punishable as a felony. Almost all of that, one, is going to result in more than $950 stolen, and that's really a part of organized crime. And again, that has always been punishable as a felony. So the Legislative Analyst's Office, I had to think of what LAO stood for, estimates increase in state prison population will result in increased costs of prisons, local and state courts, because now all the courts have to also prosecute all of these felonies. It will reduce dollars for programs for crime victims, K through 12 kids, and those in need of mental health and substance abuse services. So those are the 10 ballot measures and that you'll get to vote on. I don't know if there are any questions that you may have on any of those ballot propositions. Has the league taken a position on any of them? So we're wearing our educational hat today, and we really have to keep it tightly affixed to our heads. If you are interested in additional information about who else may have supported or opposed a particular ballot measure, you're welcome to go to the Secretary of State. Your own actually voter guide tells you who's in support and against, and any of the other websites that we mentioned, including vote411.org. We'll have that information on there as well.
And, you know, as we said in our introduction, we take the positions on issues. And so you could find that information on our local website as well, which is lwvdv.org.
Yes, in the back.
I just want to say that it's, the league recommends rather than take positions.
The league recommends rather than takes positions. Yes, that's a good clarification. Thank you. Okay. We wouldn't be the league if we didn't remind you to vote. And the election's November the 5th. The ballot should be in your mailbox very soon. They do get mailed on the 7th. And if you aren't registered, the last day to register to vote by mail is October 21st. Drop boxes will be open October 8th. Be sure to sign your ballot, please, or you're going to be getting a call, and the Department of Elections will have to do a lot of extra work to make sure that the person who filled out that ballot is the person who dropped it in the box. So be sure to sign your ballot. And also you can sign up for Where's My Ballot? And that's a wonderful way you can find out if the Department of Elections got your ballot, if they counted your ballot. It's fantastic. They'll just send you a text telling you all, giving you all of that information.
So I happened to talk to the registrar for the Contra Costa County Elections Office last week, and he said the ballots will be mailed in free drops. So I think a third will be dropped on the 7th, third on the 8th, and a third on the 9th. So if you don't get it on the 7th, don't be alarmed. You might be in that second or third group. And in terms of where's my ballot, it tells you when your ballot is being mailed to you. So if you don't have it, after like a week or so, then you might want to follow up with the elections department saying, hey, I was expecting, my ballot and I haven't gotten a notification, so kind of curious what's going on, and they can help you with that. And then, like Anna said, they will tell you when they receive it back, once they process it, whether you send it back through the postal service or through a Dropbox. I saw when we walked in, there's one right there in front of the library, so that will open on October 8th. And then, there's other election information that you can find on the Secretary of State's website and, Contra Costa Vote, and I mentioned that in the previous sessions as well.
And although the 21st of October may be the last day to register by mail, you can also, you can actually vote, still fill out a ballot at any polling location. And you can always go to the Department of Elections also and cast your vote. So we want to make sure you know about Vote 411.
Yep.
I just want to say that you can register, but if you do go to the county office of elections or any of the early polling sites when they open to register, because you missed the 21st October 21 deadline, then you have to be ready to vote at the same time.
And you'll be casting a provisional ballot.
Yes.
Then your ballot you're casting will go into provisional until they can verify your registration.
Okay, thank you. All
So,
right.
the question was what, with regards to registering to vote, if you missed that October 21st deadline, that you can still vote, but you would have to go to a polling station or the elections office, and you would register to vote, and then at the same time, you would cast your ballot, which will be a provisional ballot.
Okay. Yes.
Last time when we voted in person, which we often do, the sign-in was one of those things where you did your signature on a digital screen with your finger, and, things look so peculiar. How on earth would they ascertain that it was the same signature they have on file?
Right, so the question, and we got comment from the back that they are not picking up the question, so I'm going to repeat them. So the question is about signatures, like when we used to vote in person, or when you go vote in person, now we have these iPads where you would basically sign when your voting record, or your voting information comes up, and a lot of people just kind of scribble. And yes, that's true, but when you're being, and I've been a poll worker, so when you're voting in person and you're being asked who you are and to confirm your address information, we're pretty sure that that's the person who's there. I think the signature really comes into play when you vote by mail. And so, that would be on the back of the envelope. And basically what happens in those situations, when they come back to the elections department, they compare it to all the signatures that they have on file for you. So, before the pandemic, if you went in person and, you probably remember the books where you actually had to sign, those signatures are captured. Whatever you use to register with the DMV, that is captured. So, and they've done studies on signatures, and you think like your signature changes a lot over the years, and in some ways they do, but in a lot of ways they don't, because you're still kind of making the same motions. So they're actually pretty good at being able to look at
yeah.
the signatures. And I can tell you from my experience, I've been, and Sean is one, did you go through the certified election office?
I did not. I'm
observation?
a
So-
poll worker.
Yeah, so we went through a program where the elections office basically shows us, how the process works. And, when the ballots, the vote by mail ballots come back, a machine is capturing the signature, but a human is the one who is comparing the signatures. So they're presenting with your history of signature, with that signature on that ballot and envelope, and they look whether that is the same or not. And if they have any questions, they put it aside, and supervisor looks at it, etc.
Because I think the file that I have is my first name, my middle initial, and my last name. It's the way I usually sign my name, but the ballot always comes now with my full 3 names.
And that's how you should, so the question was, or the statement is that the ballot comes with your full name, and that's how you should sign it. Whatever your ballot says is how you should sign it. So mine's my first name, my middle initial, and my last name. So, yeah. All right, well, we just want to thank you very much for listening. It's been a long evening. If you want to know more, go to Vote 411. It's a great source of information. We follow up with candidates. We ask them to put their candidate statement on there in their own words. We don't edit it. And so they can tell you who they are and what they stand for. So take a look. And if they haven't filled it out, you should contact them.
And tell them that they should populate it. Thank you.